Hare Krishna, Hare Bol. Chai. Great to be with all of you. We're on the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter 10. This is our 11th class, starting with chapter 10. And we will start with kirtan.
Sweet souls. Happy St. Patty's Day. Let's take a deep clearing breath. Inhale through your nose, fill up. Exhale, let it go. Our opening prayers. Inhale. Om Jnana-timirandasya Jnana-anjana-shalakaya Chakshunattam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Panchakopatrubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyascha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasudeva Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, let it out, Krishna Krishna, Hare calling out, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Chant one more time together. Right, pooling together the essence of all that you are holding, you're navigating, you're experiencing. All parts of you, the shadow, the light, the joy, the grief, right, the anger, the ease, all of it. We offer all of ourselves back up to the source of ourselves, calling out right, desperately, please help me. Please help me. Please let me feel you. Deep breath in. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Shri Shri Krishna Bhagavan ki, Shri Shri Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki, Shri Shri Gaura Nitai ki, Shri Shri Radha Govinda ki, Harinam Sankirtan ki, Karmat Bhakti Asang and Beyond ki, Shastra Study Group ki, Gaura Premanande, Hari Hari.
Om Jnanatimirantasya Jnananjana Shirakaya Chakshuruniyena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Vanchakalpatarupyascha Kripa Sindhubhyeva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Okay. Jai. Great turnout today. Count 13. Good number. All right. So last week we heard from Bhishma Dev, another great devotee. We heard from Queen Kunti before, and now we hear from Bhishma Dev. Amazing prayers, amazing realizations. And we had some nice reflections on that. Let's start with that. Some reflections from Bhishma Dev, or anything that you've heard. If you're behind, that's also okay. The whole Bhagavatam is homogeneously good. We're not only taking reflections, but especially maybe if you have from the recent chapter. And then we'll jump into chapter 10. Okay. What did you hear? Even just something you shared in the WhatsApp, just so we can, yeah.
So I feel like this chapter is almost like monumental for
Bhishma's chapter. Yeah.
And I feel the text 34 in particular really stuck out to me, and I think it's the one that people reference the most as far as, you know, Krishna, Devi, the arrows. Like I think on page 518, the second sentence. Thus, his throwing of sharp arrows at the transcendental body of the Lord is as good as the worship of another devotee who throws soft roses upon him.
Yeah.
And I feel, you know, it's like almost Srila Prabhupada is like reminding us that, you know, even though this is a battle, that Krishna can't feel anything, and he, you know, because he's transcendental, and, you know, what we think of as like stabbing someone and we feel pain, but that's not necessarily the case. What the case was here is that it was love.
Yeah.
I feel like the word, I kind of went down a rabbit hole and I forgot my phone downstairs because I put notes on it. But in the beginning of the purport, there was the 5 principal relations, and the word, is it an I?
Vatsalya?
Yeah, which I'm assuming means filial affection.
Vatsalya is actually parental.
parental.
Yeah.
So it's like that unconditional love, right, that Krishna has for us. It's like that's what's being like exemplified here in this story. And
Yeah.
I mean, that's what the whole chapter is about, is love and
Yeah.
love of Godhead and remembering who we really are as spirit souls.
Absolutely. Yeah. Bhishma Dev's situation is very unusual in that he's a pure devotee, but he's actually fighting on the other side. But that's circumstantial. He had to. That's the way it kind of went. That's why he had to lose, because he was on the side that wasn't fighting for Dharma. But Krishna is using that to make a point that even if you're a great devotee, if you fight, if you take sides on the side of your religion, you're going to lose. But his heart was never opposed to the Pandavas, who he raised practically, and it was never opposed to Krishna. He was always a pure devotee. So although he had to lose, and even he's pinned down to the ground, about to die, um, still his bhakti is so powerful that it attracts Krishna to come and give him his association, so he can leave his body next to him. And Krishna is so endeared to this devotee Bhishma that he brings Yudhishthir there and brings everyone there, so we can all hear these prayers which are now famous. Here are Bhishma's realization. So it's an unusual thing, but it shows how Krishna is absolute. Yeah, those arrows, like he's not fighting Krishna because he's uh, against him. He's opposed to him. He's actually he has to. That's just the situation. But he has that pure love. Yeah.
So beautiful. So sweet. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Any other reflections from what you heard or read?
Love the reminder how we can perform our duty in three ways, right? Physical activity,
Right.
in our mind, or in our words. And so no matter where you are, I am, we are, in our like what phase or season of life we're in, if you're able to do more physical seva and like physically be at places, or if it's the desire to be there in your mind, or in what you're speaking about, that all of those all three are equally as valuable, right?
Right.
In different ways that we perform our duty and offer. I was thinking about it too, in the sense of how we offer our service.
Yeah. Because they're dependent on circumstance, right?
Right.
How much you can do with your body depends on how your body's doing.
Yeah.
Right. And your words and your mind, and it's like he actually passed away like a few months ago, but um, he was he had like something that affected his voice. He couldn't chant japa without like a lot of pain, and he couldn't really talk properly. So he would chant in his mind. He would chant his rounds, but he always chant them in his mind. And he couldn't use his fingers properly, so he wouldn't chant on beats. But he kept track because he knew that if I chant for this amount of time, this is 16 rounds. So he'd always chant, he would just time. And so he was chanting in his mind what his tongue couldn't do for years, actually, the same mantra. And he was chanting without the use of his fingers. He wasn't counting it, but he counted it. He's like, okay, at least a minimum I'm hitting 16. I know a minimum I'm chanting that much and usually more. And he continued to feel the reciprocation from Krishna because that's just what was necessary for him. So it's like, it really gets around the ritualism of things, the body, the mind, the voice, that their abilities and can be relative, but Krishna is always like receiving our service one way or another. And if you can't do something one way, you can do it another way. Mm-hmm. I think I gave the example in the class that like, let's say like the injunction is there to pay obeisances. If you can't do that with your body for any number of reasons, like you're holding something, it's like you're in a situation where you can't bow down. Like you could fold your hands, or you could just do it in your mind. That's right there in scripture. Like Hari Bhakti Vilas talks about that. It's like obeisances can even happen in the mind. They can even happen by folding your hands. So for any number of reasons, like you can't bend over. It's not like, well, too bad for you. Can't perform devotional service. It's not so limited. Yeah. Thank you. Nice reflection. Tanya.
When I read about, the few texts about when he actually did, pass away and how he was, praying to Krishna during that time, it really got me thinking about, you know, why we're asked to chant all the time. Why 16 rounds or more? Why do we continue to do this? And even in my own chanting, I chant more than 16 rounds because I've noticed that my idle mind is chanting a lot of the times, not all the time, but a lot of times.
Yeah.
When I lay in bed and I can't fall asleep and I've got one leg out of the covers because, I'm hot and cold all the time. Like I notice that I'm chanting to try to calm myself down and regulate my nervous system and all that stuff. So then I really got to thinking about, well, what do I want to happen when it's my time to die, assuming that I know it's coming, you know? And what environment do I want? And I just kind of thought about it for a while. I want all my, if I have those physical things still, I want them around me, all the artwork and all the different things around me.
Mm.
I want the Maha Mantra playing or music playing, and I want to be chanting. I want to be around people that are chanting and helping me try to keep Krishna in mind. And then I kind of went down a little bit of a rabbit hole. Like, what happens like to people that are Krishna conscious, but they have to be put on hospice and they're like have assisted, deaths with morphine on board or something? How does that work? I don't know, it just came to mind. I don't know. I just went down a little bit of
Yeah.
a rabbit hole, and I just wondered about that. But it really got me thinking about death as something that's not necessarily scary, but something to prepare for and to be ready
Yeah.
and let your loved ones know how you want it done.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's a transition. Transitions are always like the most challenging parts of life. Birth is challenging, puberty, graduation, hired, fired, marriage, death. They're the most challenging parts, but they're part of existence. And so death is like a big gateway. And for the devotee, they're preparing for what their next service is, whether it's in some body or another, or it's in the spiritual world, one way or another. And we're cultivating our consciousness because that's the whole thing. Is like that's what Chapter 8 Bhagavad Gita is talking about. Is that your destination is just a function of your consciousness, whatever you really want. And our chanting and our service is really how we prepare for that. As far as somebody in hospice care, it's like anything else. Like I was saying earlier, that your ability to do something physically and mentally may vary according to circumstance. But somebody was asked, Srila Prabhupada was asked this by somebody, like, what if somebody can't think of Krishna at the time of death? What if it's not possible for them for any reason? And there was a whole conversation there. One question was, what if they're thinking of their guru? And Prabhupada said, it's as good as thinking of Krishna. Thinking of the devotee of Krishna is just as good. It's non-different. They're in the medium. They're a medium for Krishna. And another question was, well, what if circumstantially they can't? And Prabhupada said, then Krishna will enter your consciousness and forcibly connect with you. That it's a two-way thing. It's a relationship. It's not like, oh, too bad, didn't get your call, so you're out of luck. It's like Krishna is there. He's there with us the whole time. He knows our intention. So there's always some way or another. And I think the greatest benediction personally for sure is just if you have devotees around you to keep you in Krishna consciousness, to chant for you, keep kirtan going, support you, pray for you. That's my hope, that whenever I have to leave this body, the devotees one way or another are praying for me to stay connected to Krishna, and if they can come and chant, that'd be the best. Ideally, I'd love to go in the middle of a raging kirtan. That'd be fantastic. But one way or another, Krishna, he reciprocates with our sincere desires. So that's what Prabhupada said, and that's the function of the relationship. It's like we're trying, and also Krishna, he's there on his end.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. All right, any other reflections? Okay, let's dive into chapter 10. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Chapter 10, Departure of Lord Krishna for Dwarka. Shonaka Muni asked, after killing his enemies who desired to usurp his rightful inheritance, how did the greatest of all religious men, Maharaj Yudhishthira, assisted by his brothers, rule his subjects? Surely he could not freely enjoy his kingdom with unrestricted consciousness. Prabhupada talks here about like how the idea is that Yudhishthira, as a leader, he's not just like, oh, good, now I'm in power, like I could just enjoy. He took his responsibilities very seriously. As we can see by his grieving in the previous chapter, he's feeling so heartbroken that so many people died to put him into power. But now Shonaka is asking, like, well, what happened after that? So continuing, Verse 3, Maharaj Yudhishthira, after being enlightened by what was spoken by Bhishmadev and Lord Sri Krishna the Infallible, engaged himself in matters of perfect knowledge, because all his misgivings were eradicated. Thus he ruled over the earth and seas and was followed by his younger brothers. And there's a nice kind of glimpse here into the nature of that ruled kingdom, what it is like to be ruled by somebody who's so dharmic, who's so righteous. And verse 4 through 6 really talk about this. Verse 4, during the reign of Maharaj Yudhishthira, the clouds showered all the water the people needed, and the earth produced all the necessities of man in profusion. Due to its fatty milk bag and cheerful attitude, the cow used to moisten the grazing ground with milk. And Prabhupada really gets very emphatic in this purport, like very like almost emotional. You can see, like I'm going to read it to you. Prabhupada's going to talk about this principle of just receiving the natural gifts. The basic principle of economic development is centered on land and cows. The necessities of human society are food grains, fruits, milk, minerals, clothing, wood, etc. One requires all these items to fulfill the material needs of the body. Certainly one does not require flesh and fish or iron tools and machinery. During the regime of Maharaj Yudhishthira, all over the world, there were regulated rainfalls. Rainfalls are not in the control of the human being. The heavenly king Indradeva is the controller of rains, and he is the servant of the Lord. When the Lord is obeyed by the king and the people under the king's administration, there are regulated rains from the horizon, and these rains are the cause of all varieties of production on the land. Not only do regulated rains help ample production of grains and fruits, but when combined with astronomical influence, there is ample production of valuable stones and pearls. Grains and vegetables can sumptuously feed a man and animals, and a fatty cow delivers enough milk to supply a man sumptuously with vigor and vitality. If there's enough milk, enough grains, enough fruit, enough cotton, enough silk, and enough jewels, then why do the people need cinemas, houses of prostitution, slaughterhouses, etc.? What is in need of an artificial, luxurious life of cinema, cars, radio, flesh, and hotels? Has this civilization produced anything but quarreling individually and nationally? Has this civilization enhanced the cause of equality and fraternity by sending thousands of men into a hellish factory and the war fields at the whims of a particular man? It is said here that the cows used to moisten the pasturing land with milk because their milk bags were fatty and the animals were joyful. Do they not require, therefore, proper protection for a joyful life by being fed with a sufficient quantity of grass in the field? Why should men kill cows for their selfish purposes? Why should man not be satisfied with grains, fruits, and milk, which combined together can produce hundreds and thousands of palatable dishes? Why are there slaughterhouses all over the world to kill innocent animals? Maharaj Parikshit, grandson of Maharaj Yudhishthira, while touring his vast kingdom, saw a black man attempting to kill a cow. The king at once arrested the butcher and chastised him sufficiently. Should not a king or executive head protect the lives of the poor animals who are unable to defend themselves? Is this humanity? Are not the animals of a country citizens also? Then why are they allowed to be butchered in organized slaughterhouses? Are these the signs of equality, fraternity, and nonviolence? It's very much the Socratic method. Prabhupada is asking like very pointed questions here. Therefore, in contrast with the modern, advanced, civilized form of government, an autocracy like Maharaj Yudhishthira's is by far superior to a so-called democracy, in which animals are killed and a man less than an animal is allowed to cast votes for another less than animal man. Prabhupada is arguing for enlightened leadership here, not just leadership by popular vote. We are all creatures of material nature. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is said that the Lord himself is the seed-giving father, and material nature is the mother of all living beings in all shapes. Thus, Mother Material Nature has enough foodstuff, both for animals and for men, by the grace of the Father Almighty, Sri Krishna. The human being is the elder brother of all other living beings. He is endowed with intelligence more powerful than animals is for realizing the course of nature and the indications of the Almighty Father. Human civilization should depend on the production of material nature, without artificially attempting economic development to turn the world into a chaos of artificial greed and power, only for the purpose of artificial luxuries and sense gratification. This is but the life of dogs and hogs. Quite forceful. So, notably, our philosophy is not against technological advancement per se. Prabhupada used airplanes to travel around the world and share bhakti everywhere he went. Mass production of books requires technology and all these things, but there's an over-reliance on it. And just a really weird twisted value system that kind of glorifies the advancement of technology and minimizes or ignores actual values. So in other words, one may have some sort of technology but not know what to do with it. One is just instructed in how to develop externally, but the internal life is not cultivated. And there is this weird and false sense that we cannot be satisfied with a simple life. Like it's not possible to be satisfied with just like living off the land and being happy with whatever nature provides and living a simpler life. And that's simply not true. That's not actually true at all. Humans can be quite satisfied with that. On the other hand, the advancement of more and more and more complications is not doing anything to make people happy in and of itself, right? So Prabhupada, I always found this to be very notable, very forceful purport, where he also roundly condemns the organized slaughter of animals as an attempt to satisfy the tongue and to satisfy the soul. It just doesn't work, and it creates all kinds of karma. So I want to read that purport to you. Verse 6, because of the kings having no enemy, the living beings were not at any time disturbed by mental agonies, diseases, or excessive heat or cold. And Prabhupada again talks about the unity of living beings in the purport. To be non-violent to human beings and to be a killer or enemy of the poor animals is Satan's philosophy. In this age, there is enmity toward poor animals, and therefore the poor creatures are always anxious. The reaction of the poor animals is being forced on human society, and therefore there is always a strain of cold or hot war between men individually, collectively, or nationally. At the time of Maharaj Yudhishthira, there were no different nations, although there were different subordinate states. The whole world was united, and the supreme head, being a trained king like Yudhishthira, kept all the inhabitants free from anxiety, diseases, and excessive heat and cold. They were not only economically well-to-do, but also physically fit and undisturbed by supernatural power, by enmity from other living beings, and by disturbance of bodily and mental agonies. There is a proverb in Bengali that a bad king spoils the kingdom, and a bad housewife spoils the family, right? It's like the center of the kingdom is the king. And so because he was so enlightened, everyone was so uplifted by his presence, Yudhishthira. Because the king was pious and obedient to the Lord and sages, because he was no one's enemy, and because he was a recognized agent of the Lord and therefore protected by him, all the citizens under the king's protection were, so to speak, directly protected by the Lord and his authorized agents. Unless one is pious and recognized by the Lord, one cannot make others happy who are under their care. There is full cooperation between man and God and man and nature. And this conscious cooperation between man and God and man and nature, as exemplified by Maharaj Yudhishthira, can bring about happiness, peace, and prosperity in the world. The attitude of exploiting one another, the custom of the day, will only bring misery. So we're getting some glimpses into enlightened leadership here. Afterwards, when the Lord asked permission to depart and the king gave it, the Lord offered his respects to Maharaj Yudhishthira by bowing down at his feet, and the king embraced him. After this, the Lord, being embraced by others and receiving their obeisances, got into his chariot. At that time, Subhadra, Draupadi, Kunti, Uttara, Gandhari, Dhritarashtra, Yuyutsu, Kripacharya, Nakula, Sahadeva, Bhimasena, Daumya, and Satyavati all nearly fainted, because it was impossible for them to bear separation from the Lord. The intelligent who have understood the Supreme Lord in association with pure devotees and have become freed from bad materialistic association can never avoid hearing the glories of the Lord, even though they have heard them only once. How then could the Pandavas tolerate his separation? For they had been intimately associated with his person, seeing him face to face, touching him, conversing with him, and sleeping, sitting, and dining with him. All their hearts were melting for him on the pot of attraction. They looked at him without blinking their eyes, and they moved hither and thither in perplexity. The female relatives, whose eyes were flooded with tears out of anxiety for Krishna, came out of the palace. They could stop their tears only with great difficulty. They feared that tears would cause misfortune at the time of departure. So we're seeing that when Krishna leaves, although there's no separation from Krishna for his pure devotees, when Krishna is on the planet, there's this experience of separation and reconnection, and so there's like a spiritual kind of longing that's created as he's leaving. Prabhupada talks about that in the purport, also talks about connection with Krishna. He says, because Krishna is absolute, there's no difference between his name, form, quality, etc. Our intimate relation with Krishna can be confidentially revived by our talking of, hearing of, or remembering him. It is due to spiritual potency. When the Lord was departing from the palace of Hastinapura, different types of drums and flutes of different types all sounded together to show him honor. Out of a loving desire to see the Lord, the royal ladies of the Kurus got on top of the palace, and smiling with affection and shyness, they showered flowers upon the Lord. At that time, Arjuna, the great warrior and conqueror of sleep, that's one of Arjuna's little epithets, Gudakesha, the one who conquers sleep. Everyone is being dominated by sleep. As soon as you get tired, you gotta lie down. Arjuna was the conqueror of sleep. The intimate friend of the most beloved Supreme Lord took up an umbrella which had a handle of jewels and was embroidered with lace and pearls. Uddhava and Satyaki began to fan the Lord with decorated fans, and the Lord, as a master of Madhu, seated on scattered flowers, commanded them along the road. It was being heard here and there that the benedictions paid to Krishna were neither befitting nor unbefitting, for they were all for the Absolute, who was now playing the part of a human being. From the purport, at places there were sounds of Vedic benediction, aiming at the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. The benedictions were fitting in the sense that the Lord was playing the part of a human being, as if a cousin of Maharaj Yudhishthir, but they are also unfitting because the Lord is absolute and has nothing to do with any kind of material relativities. He is nirguna, or there are no material qualities in him, but he is full of transcendental qualities. Absorbed in the thought of the transcendental qualities of the Lord who was sung in select poetry, the ladies on the roofs of all the houses of Hastinapura began to talk of him. This talk was more attractive than the hymns of the Vedas. Very interesting. From the purport, while the ladies on the tops of the houses in the capital of the kings were talking about the Lord, their talk was more pleasing than the Vedic hymns. Anything sung in the praise of the Lord is Shruti mantra. There are songs of Thakur Narottam Das, one of the acharyas in the Gaudiya Sampradaya, composed in simple Bengali language. But Thakur Vishwanath Chakravarti, another very learned acharya of the same Sampradaya, has approved the songs by Thakur Narottam Das to be as good as Vedic mantras. And this is so because of the subject matter. The language is immaterial, but the subject matter is important. The ladies who are all absorbed in the thought and actions of the Lord develop the consciousness of Vedic wisdom by the grace of the Lord. And therefore, although such ladies might not have been very learned scholars in Sanskrit or otherwise, still whatever they spoke was more attractive than the Vedic hymns. The Vedic hymns and the Upanishads are sometimes indirectly directed to the Supreme Lord, but the talks of the ladies were directly spoken of the Lord, and thus they were more pleasing to the heart. The ladies' talks appeared to be more valuable than the learned Brahmanas' benedictions, right? It's a very interesting thing that some of the Shastra, some of the scripture is indirect, right? If you read the Ishopanishad, you can go back and look at our Ishopanishad classes on YouTube. We studied that together. It's one of the Upanishads Prabhupada commented on it, actually. It's a nice verse. I think it's verse 5. Tad ejati, tad najati, tad dure, tad vantike, tad antarasya sarvasya, tadu sarvasya syabhayataha. He is here and he is there. He's very far away and very near as well. He is inside everything. He's outside of everything. It's using these contradictions to indicate, some of the contradictory nature of the Lord, but it's not actually talking about him as a person. It's talking about super soul and his all-pervading, apparently contradictory capacity. And much of the Upanishads are like that. And therefore, although they're Brahmanically very important, but they're mainly indirect. But here we have these ladies who, as Prabhupada's pointing out, they didn't necessarily go to school for Sanskrit. They weren't necessarily like either great poets or musicians or scholars or yogis, but what? They love Krishna. They love Krishna. So they're singing, they're talking about Krishna and his qualities. And the Bhagavatam here is affirming that this talk was more attractive, more powerful than the hymns of the Vedas, because it was directly about him. They said, here he is, the original personality of Godhead as we definitely remember him. He alone existed before the manifested creation of the modes of nature, and in him only, because he is the Supreme Lord, all living beings merge as if sleeping at night, their energy suspended. So nice purport here about the nature of time as cyclical and the manifestation and withdrawal of all living beings on cycle, the cycle of the universe. I think I gave a reference to a book that a friend of mine, a devotee scholar, wrote recently called "The Vedic Wisdom and the Sages," or "The Big Bang and the Vedic Wisdom," or something. I love the reference to it in chat. It's about, that's him in India, yeah, actually. Siddha Hari Prabhu. It's about what the Bhagavatam says about the nature of the cyclic manifestation withdrawal of the universe and how it actually corresponds like incredibly, like staggeringly closely to what modern science has to say. So much so that it doesn't appear to be by chance. And you can look at that. I can send the link in chat if you're interested in it again. But this purport is talking about that because that's what this verse is talking about. This prayer of the ladies of Hastinapur. The personality of Godhead, again desiring to give names and forms to his parts and parcels, the living entities, place them under the guidance of material nature. By his own potency, material nature is empowered to recreate. When it's time for the living entities to be remanifest, they have their karma, they have their direction, they have their impetus, their momentum in a certain direction. Krishna actually facilitates that. And he puts them under the care of the material nature to give them bodies, to give them some category of existence. And they're under her care, living in the universe in some species or another, playing out their karma. Here is the same Supreme Personality of Godhead, whose transcendental form is experienced by the great devotees who are completely cleansed of material consciousness by dint of rigid devotional service and full control of life and the senses. And that is the only way to purify existence. Oh, dear friends, here is that very personality of Godhead whose attractive and confidential pastimes are described in the confidential parts of Vedic literature by his great devotees. It is he only who creates, maintains, and annihilates the material world and yet remains unaffected. So in these two verses, 23 and 24, again, we're hearing about the supremacy of bhakti, right? 23 says that he's experienced by the great devotees who are completely cleansed of material consciousness. How? By dint of devotional service and full control of their life and senses. Prabhupada talks about this in the purport. When the senses are engaged in more attractive activities, there is no chance of their being attracted by any inferior engagements. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is said that, and then in italics, it says, the senses can be controlled only by better engagements. Devotional service necessitates purifying the senses or engaging them in the activities of devotional service. Devotional service is not inaction. Anything done in the service of the Lord becomes at once purified of its material nature. The material conception is due to ignorance only. There is nothing beyond Vasudeva. Vasudeva means Krishna. The Vasudeva conception gradually develops in the heart of the learned after a prolonged acceleration of the receptive organs, hearing, receiving. But the process ends in the knowledge of accepting Vasudeva as all in all. In the case of devotional service, this very same method is accepted from the very beginning. And by the grace of the Lord, all factual knowledge becomes revealed in the heart of a devotee due to dictation by the Lord from within. Therefore, controlling the senses by devotional service is the only and easiest means. So once again, we're hearing about how bhakti is the easiest way. These ladies of Hastinapur are affirming the same thing that the Bhagavad Gita is saying. Verse 25, whenever there are kings and administrators living like animals in the lowest modes of existence, the Lord in his transcendental form manifests his supreme power, the truth positive, shows special mercy to the faithful, performs wonderful activities, and manifests various transcendental forms as is necessary in different periods and ages. So in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna talks about how whenever there is a decline in dharma, like real religion, real spiritual understanding, and predominance of adharma, irreligion, then he advents himself. And that can be personally, it can be in the form of, for example, in this age, in his name, or in so many avatars. So Prabhupada's talking about that in this purport as well, that when there is abuse of power, the result is that the whole atmosphere becomes surcharged with anarchy and vicious elements, nepotism, bribery, cheating, aggression, and therefore famine, epidemic, war, and similar other disturbing features become prominent in human society. And the devotees of the Lord or the faithful are persecuted by all means. All these symptoms indicate the time of an incarnation of the Lord to reestablish the principles of religion and to vanquish the maladministrators. This is also confirmed in Bhagavad Gita. So in this age, that's particularly Krishna's advent as the holy name. So this is how we're combating the what Prabhupada just listed: nepotism, bribery, corruption, war. As another great sage once put it, war, what is it good for? Absolutely nothing. So our our weapon, so to speak, against that is the holy name. That's his incarnation. He's manifesting personally through sound. As Jiva Goswami affirms, Lord Chaitanya and his mission, their appearance in this world doesn't exactly destroy the demons and demoniac persons. It destroys the demoniac influence in the hearts of living entities. Think back on our own development as devotees. As one advances, one starts to see that their own hypocrisy, their greed, their anger, their lust, their egoistic tendencies actually become lessened and lessened. That's the influence of Krishna. It's like not that no one's coming like cutting our head off. Oh yes, you're not following the laws of religion, you must die. No, that's not Krishna's mood in this age particularly. Otherwise, sorry, but there's not anyone left. So Lord Chaitanya he's taking out he's annihilating the demoniac influence. And how? Through the chanting. The chanting purifies everything. So it's very transformative, very sweet. Krishna's advent is not accompanied by any kind of battle of Kurukshetra. The battle is in the heart, and the agent is Krishna's name. So, continuing. Verse 26. Oh, how supremely glorified is the dynasty of King Yadu, and how virtuous is the land of Mathura, it's Vrindavan, where the supreme leader of all living beings, the husband of the goddess of fortune, has taken his birth and wandered in his childhood. Undoubtedly, it is wonderful that Dvarka has defeated the glories of the heavenly planets and has enhanced the celebrity of the earth. The inhabitants of Dvarka are always seeing the soul of all living beings, Krishna, in his loving feature. He glances at them and favors them with sweet smiles. Oh, friends, just think of his wives, whose hands he has accepted. How they must have undergone vows, baths, fire sacrifices, and perfect worship of the Lord of the universe, to constantly relish now the nectar from his lips by kissing. The damsels of Vrajabhumi would often faint just by expecting such favors. Those of you who were with us in the Krishna book reading heard about how Krishna has, at this point, he's actually married so many queens, 16,108 queens, actually. And so the ladies of Hastinapur are glorifying their bhakti for Krishna. The children of these ladies are Pradyumna, Samba, Amba, etc. Ladies like Rukmini, Satyabhama, and Jambavati were forcibly taken away by him from their Svayamvara ceremonies after he defeated many powerful kings headed by Shishupala. And other ladies were also forcibly taken away by him after he killed Bhaumasura and thousands of his assistants. All these ladies are glorious. The Swayamvara is when these particular wives of his, there was a function for them to choose their husbands. And part of the function was that they were inviting any man to come of good character to demonstrate his prowess and particular strength and ability in specific ways. And Krishna, for these particular devotees, would come and defeat all of them and then win their hand. They, of course, all wanted him because that's the nature. They're pure devotees. They want Krishna. The other reference here is to Bhaumasura, was a great demon. He had kidnapped 16,000 women. 16,000 women. He had kidnapped them and basically tried to traffic them, make them his own, personal servants. And Krishna came and liberated them. And they were freed. And they said, we don't want anything but just to serve you. We're all your devotees. And where are we going to go anyway? As far as society is concerned, we're contaminated by being associated with this demon. And Krishna said, I will accept you as my wives. I will be your husband, everyone. And he expanded himself. And so we see here again, Krishna reciprocating with his devotees and how he completely transcends any material situation, that he comes and frees 16,000 women. And who can handle that level of responsibility? Well, Krishna can. So he became their husband. And the ladies all know about this and are glorifying it. All these women auspiciously glorified their lives, despite their being without individuality and without purity. Their husband, the lotus-eyed personality of God, had never left them alone at home. He always pleased their hearts by making valuable presentations. From the purport, the Lord used to live with his 16,108 wives constantly. He expanded himself into 16,108 plenary portions, and each and every one of them was the Lord himself, without deviation from the original personality. As husband of so many wives, he pleased them all with presentations, even at a great costly endeavor. If therefore anyone desires the Lord to become one's husband, the Lord fulfills such desires in full. Continuing. While the ladies of the capital, Hastinapur, were greeting him and talking in this way, the Lord, smiling, accepted their good greetings, and casting the grace of his glance over them, he departed from the city. Maharaj Yudhishthira, although no one's enemy, engaged 4 divisions of defense, horse, elephant, chariot, and army, to accompany Lord Krishna. The Maharaj did this because of the enemy and also out of affection for the Lord. It's an honor guard. He's sending an honor guard. Out of profound affection for Lord Krishna, the Pandavas, who were of the Kuru dynasty, accompanied him a considerable distance to see him off. They were overwhelmed with the thought of future separation. The Lord, however, persuaded them to return home, and he proceeded towards Dvarka with his dear companions. On his journey through these provinces, he was welcomed, worshipped, and given various presentations. In the evening, in all places, the Lord suspended his journey to perform evening rites. This was regularly observed after sunset. Jai. End of chapter. Yeah, I'm skipping a couple of verses here and there. That's chapter 10. We can pause and take any reflections before we jump into chapter 11. Like I said last week, we're trying to go a little faster, and some of these chapters are a little more kind of travel and less exactly happening. So I won't read every verse, but I have the gist.
I had a
Anything
couple of
stand out?
thoughts.
Yeah, go ahead, Nancy.
One was, it gives me comfort and ease to know that I might not be able to do all of the rituals perfectly,
Right.
but if I am thinking and doing service and I'm trying to and chanting the holy names, etc., and this good association, that I can perhaps uh, please Krishna as much as somebody who does everything perfectly, and if they're at temple doing whatever. So I don't necessarily have to have that qualification in order to be qualified to attract Krishna.
Yeah.
Really,
One of the purports, Prabhupada says, by engagement in the service of the Lord, the designated disqualifications are removed, and as pure souls, they become eligible to enter into the kingdom of God.
yeah.
Yeah, it's the same. It's a major theme of Prahlad's prayers, which we're reading on Friday mornings. Prahlad, of course, came from a family headed by the most powerful and influential demon of the time, really ever, Hiranyakashipu, and he felt himself quite fallen, but he's actually taking shelter of this very principle that, okay, I'm a devotee, and Krishna accepts the service of his devotees. So here's another beautiful reminder. Thank you
Yeah.
for that.
I did also have a question. This is an
Sure.
aside. So, Krishna, is it because it's transcendental that the gopis in Vrindavan were never married to Krishna? So even the gopis who their
Right.
clothes were taken from them and they came out of the pond naked, and that was like a transgression for a man to see what
Right. Although
anybody.
he was a boy at the time, but yeah.
Well, yeah, well, he looked like a boy,
Yeah,
but
he's God. But
yeah,
he was like 6 years old or something.
yeah,
Yeah.
but so is it because it's this sort of transcendental plane that although the rules of seeing somebody in that way would
Right.
mean that they should be there? Because it says in the because I was reading this today in the I guess it was in the Wisdom of the Sages. We were
Mm.
reading about the gopis, and it said, did that ever happen, or does that not matter because they're doing the rasa dance with him, and they have
Yeah.
a never-ending exchange?
The nature of Krishna's relationships is that there's a variety of different kinds of manifestations. Like we had the 5 divisions generally are like servitorship, friendship, um,
Parent, parental.
parent,
Mm,
conjugal lover,
mhm,
and also neutrality. But within them is so much variety. So within the Madhurya rasa, the conjugal rasa, there is wedded and unwedded. And so in Dvarka, Krishna has so many wives, and
mhm.
these ladies in Hastinapur are glorifying them. In Vrindavan, he doesn't actually marry, but
Right.
the nature of the relationship is it's more free. It's not it has the variety of how that's different from wedded love is described in, for example, the Nectar of Devotion. But they're like Krishna's girlfriends. They all
Right.
love him,
But
and
those gopis have the ability to then go and marry
yeah, they are.
other
Many of them
people.
are married.
Okay.
But for the nature of the pastime is that their love for Krishna is such that it supersedes their so-called marriage, right? So like when Krishna is in the forest playing his flute, they all come running because they're just looking forward. They've been hankering for so long. And the bonds of society, including so-called being married to someone else, are just there to demonstrate the strength of the love that these particular devotees have, that they'll transgress all of that just to be with Krishna, the soul of all souls, the husband of all souls.
Right.
And so that's the nature of that particular place and the nature of those kinds of relationships in Vrindavan. It's like there is a special quality to it. Yeah. Yeah. They're like teenagers. It's like Romeo and Juliet, but except it ends happily. They just can't get enough of each other, like 14-year-old boys and girls, but without the tragic ending. So it's different than when you're married, and there's more formality, and like there's kids, and like there's a palace, and that's also very beautiful. And he has devotees reciprocating with him that way, but there's some variety there. So yeah, that's Vrindavan. Thank you. All right, chapter 11, Lord Krishna's entrance into Dvarka. Suta Goswami said, upon reaching the border of his most prosperous metropolis, known as the country of the Anartas, Dvarka, the Lord sounded his auspicious conch shell, heralding his arrival and apparently pacifying the dejection of the inhabitants. 1 second while I just pull up my notes in this chapter. So he's leaving one place, just like the sun sets in one place and rises somewhere else, right? Someone's left in the dark and someone else gets light. So now everybody's very happy to hear that he's coming. The white and fat bold conch shell, being gripped by the hand of Lord Krishna, was sounded by him, appeared to be reddened by the touch of his transcendental lips. It seemed that a white swan was playing in the stems of red lotus flowers. The citizens of Dvarka, having heard that sound which threatens fear personified in the material world, began to run towards him fast, just to have a long-desired audience with the Lord, who is the protector of all devotees. The citizens arrived before the Lord with their respective presentations, offering them to the fully satisfied and self-sufficient one, who by his own potency incessantly supplies others. These presentations were like the offering of a lamp to the sun. Yet the citizens began to speak in ecstatic language to receive the Lord, just as words welcome their guardian and father. Right, so from the purport, Krishna is self-sufficient and there is no need for him to seek happiness from anything beyond himself. Therefore, any presentation, however valuable it may be, is not needed by him. But still, because he is the well-wisher for one and all, he accepts from everyone everything that is offered to him in pure devotional service. It is not that he is in want for such things, because the things are themselves generated from his energy. The comparison is made herein that making offerings to the Lord is something like offering a lamp in the worship of the sun god. Anything fiery and illuminating is but an emanation of the energy of the sun, and yet to worship the sun god it is necessary to offer him a lamp. In the worship of the sun there is some sort of demand made by the worshipper, but in the case of devotional service to the Lord, there is no question of demand from either side. It is all a sign of pure love and affection between the Lord and the devotee. So it's the nature of offerings. Krishna doesn't need anything, but if it's made in bhakti, he's accepting it. The citizen said, O Lord, you are worshipped by all demigods like Brahma, the four sanas, and even the King of Heaven. You are the ultimate rest for those who are really aspiring to achieve the highest benefit of life. You are the supreme transcendental Lord, and inevitable time cannot exert its influence upon you. O Creator of the universe, you are our mother, well-wisher, Lord, Father, spiritual master, and worshipable deity. By following in your footsteps, we have become successful in every respect. We pray, therefore, that you continue to bless us with your mercy. Just in passing, we can see, like, the source has, sometimes you hear about God the Father. They're also saying he's like the mother, too. So there's no, it's not like a one-sided thing. Like, Krishna is the father of everybody, he's also the mother. Or you could say, like, Radharani, or the feminine feature, is also included in him. So they're affirming that he's in every way their source and protector. Quote, there is no need to worship any deity but the Lord. The Lord is all-powerful, and if he is satisfied by our obedience unto his lotus feet, he is competent to bestow upon us all blessings for the successful execution of both our material and spiritual lives. Verse 8. Oh, it is our good luck that we have come again today under your protection by your presence. For your lordship rarely visits even the denizens of heaven. Now it is possible for us to look into your smiling face, which is full of affectionate glances. We can now see your transcendental form, full of all auspiciousness. They're offering these nice prayers. From verse 10. Upon hearing the speeches, the Lord, who was very kind to the citizens and the devotees, entered the city of Dvarka and acknowledged all their greetings by casting his transcendental glance over them. Verse 12, the city of Dvarkapuri was filled with the opulences of all seasons. There were hermitages, orchards, flower gardens, parks, and reservoirs of water breeding lotus flowers all over. The city gateway, the household doors, and festooned arches along the roads were all nicely decorated with festive signs like plantain trees and mango leaves, all to welcome the Lord. Flags, garlands, and painted signs and slogans all combined to shade the sunshine. The highways, subways, lanes, markets, and public meeting places were all thoroughly cleansed and then moistened with scented water. And to welcome the Lord, fruits, flowers, and unbroken seeds were strewn everywhere. In each and every door of the residential houses, auspicious things like curd, yogurt, unbroken fruits, sugarcane, and full water pots with articles for worship, incense, and candles were all displayed. On hearing that the most dear Krishna was approaching Dvarka, magnanimous Vasudeva, Akrura, Ugrasena, Balaram, the superhumanly powerful, Pradyumna, Chaudradeshna, and Samba, the son of Jambavati, all extremely happy, abandoned resting, sitting, and dining. They hastened toward the Lord on chariots with brahmanas bearing flowers. Before them were elephants, emblems of good fortune. Conch shells and bugles were sounded and Vedic hymns were chanted. Thus they offered their respects, which were saturated with affection. Verse 19, at the same time, many hundreds of well-known prostitutes began to proceed on various vehicles. They were all very eager to meet the Lord, and their beautiful faces were decorated with dazzling earrings which enhanced the beauty of their foreheads. I always thought this was very interesting. Purport, we may not hate even the prostitutes if they are devotees of the Lord. Even to date, there are many prostitutes in great cities of India who are sincere devotees of the Lord. By tricks of chance, one may be obliged to adopt a profession which is not very adorable in society. But that does not hamper one in executing devotional service to the Lord. Devotional service to the Lord is uncheckable in all circumstances. It is understood herewith that even in those days, about 5,000 years ago, there were prostitutes in a city like Dvarka where Lord Krishna resided. This means that prostitutes are necessary citizens for the proper upkeep of society. The government opens wine shops, but this does not mean that the government encourages the drinking of wine. The idea is that there is a class of men who will drink at any cost. And it has been experienced that prohibition in great cities encouraged illicit smuggling of wine. Similarly, men who are not satisfied at home require such concessions. And if there is no prostitutes, then such low men will induce others into prostitution. It is better that prostitutes be available in the marketplace so that the sanctity of society can be maintained. It is better to maintain a class of prostitutes than to encourage prostitutes within society. The real reformation is to enlighten all people to become devotees of the Lord, and that will check all kinds of deteriorating factors of life. It's not like, what's the word? There's not like some weird utopian idea here, right? Like it's a society with all the ups and downs of it. But still, if anybody's a devotee, they transcend their social situation. It's a very interesting thing. And there's a reference here to a very famous pastime. I'll just read it. Sri Bilvamangal Thakur, a great acharya, in his householder life was overly attached to a prostitute who happened to be a devotee of the Lord. One night when the Thakur came to Chintamani's house in torrents of rain and thunder, Chintamani was astonished to see how the Thakur could come on such a dreadful night. After crossing a foaming river which was full of waves, she said to him that his attraction for the flesh and bone of an insignificant woman like her would be properly utilized if it could be diverted to the devotional service of the Lord to achieve attraction for the transcendental beauty of the Lord. It was a momentous hour for the Thakur, and he took a turn towards spiritual realization by the words of a prostitute. Later on, the Thakur accepted the prostitute as his spiritual master. And in several places of his literary works, he has glorified the name of Chintamani, who showed him the right path. He's like falling all over himself to go seek the services of this prostitute. And she's like, if you only loved Krishna the way you love this silly, insignificant body of mine, you'd be so fortunate. And it hit him like a thunderbolt, and he changed his direction in life. So he glorifies her as one guru who showed him the way. She was a devotee, actually, although she was engaged in that profession. In the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says, O son of Pritha, even the low-born chandalas, those who are born in a family of unbelievers, even the prostitutes shall attain perfection of life if they take shelter of unalloyed devotional service to me. Because in the path of devotional service, there are no impediments due to degraded birth and occupation. The path is open for everyone who agrees to follow it. This is coming up again and again, just like in Prahlad's prayers. It's an open path. It's for everybody. Don't let anybody gatekeep you. It's for everybody. Don't gatekeep yourself. Don't try to keep yourself out. Therefore, the only reformation that is necessary in society is to make an organized effort to turn the citizens into devotees of the Lord, and thus all good qualities of the denizens of heaven will overtake them in their own way. On the other hand, those who are non-devotees have no good qualifications whatsoever, however they may be maturely advanced. The difference is that the devotees of the Lord are on the path of liberation, whereas the non-devotees are on the path of further entanglement in material bondage. The criterion of advancement of civilization is whether the people are educated and advance on the path of salvation. And Krishna is being greeted in various different ways by persons according to their qualification and position. Expert dramatists, artists, dancers, singers, historians, genealogists, and learned speakers all gave their respective contributions, being inspired by the superhuman pastimes of the Lord. Thus they proceeded on and on. Verse 21, Lord Krishna, the personality of Godhead, approached them and offered due honor and respect to each and every one of the friends, relatives, citizens, and all others who came to receive and welcome him. The Almighty Lord greeted everyone present by bowing his head, exchanging greetings, embracing, shaking hands, looking and smiling, giving assurances, and awarding benedictions, even to the lowest in rank. Then the Lord personally entered the city, accompanied by elderly relatives and invalid brahmanas with their wives, all offering benedictions and singing the glories of the Lord. Others also praised the glories of the Lord. So even then, there's kirtan. When Lord Krishna passed over the public roads, all the ladies from the respectable families of Dvarka went up on the roofs of the palaces just to have a look at the Lord. They considered this to be the greatest festival. The inhabitants of Dvarka were regularly accustomed to look upon the reservoir of all beauty, the infallible Lord, yet they were never satiated. The Lord's chest is the abode of the goddess of fortune. His moon-like face is the drinking vessel for eyes which hanker after all that is beautiful. His arms are the resting places for the administrative demigods, and his lotus feet are the refuge of pure devotees who never talk or sing of any subject except his lordship. As the Lord passed along the public road of Dvarka, his head was protected from the sunshine by a white umbrella. White feathered fans moved in semicircles, and showers of flowers fell upon the road. His yellow garments and garlands of flowers made it appear as if a dark cloud were surrounded simultaneously by sun, moon, lightning, and shadows.
Rainbows.
I'm sorry, lightning and rainbows. Yes. After entering the house of his father, he was embraced by the mothers present, and the Lord offered his obeisances unto them by placing his head at their feet. Got to respect your mom or moms. So all the ones who have devotion for him in that mood, he's bowing down like an obedient son. The mothers were headed by Devaki, bracket, his real mother, his birth mother. So in Vedic culture, you don't just have one mother, actually. You collect mothers because they're a good thing. Anybody who treats you like a mother, you can reciprocate like that. And actually, their Shastra says that the wife of the Brahmin, the wife of the king, the wife of the guru, the earth, the cow, and your birth mother, anybody who gives you milk, anybody who nurses or takes care of you, they're all considered to be mother. And you have to give a lot of respect to all of them. So Krishna is doing that. The mothers, after embracing their sons, sat him on their laps due to pure affection. Milk sprang from their breasts. They were overwhelmed with delight, and the tears from their eyes wedded the Lord. It doesn't matter how old he gets. He's still their boy. Thereafter, the Lord entered the palaces, his palaces, which are perfect to the fullest extent. His wives lived in them, and they numbered over 16,000. The queens of Lord Sri Krishna rejoiced within their minds to see their husband home after a long period abroad. The queens got up at once from their seats and meditations. As was socially customary, they covered their faces shyly and looked about coyly. The insuperable ecstasy, insuperable means you cannot do anything more than that, were so strong that the queens who were shy first embraced the Lord in the innermost recesses of their hearts. Then they embraced him visually, and then they sent their sons to embrace him, which is equal to personal embracing. But O chief amongst the Bhrigus, though they tried to restrain their feelings, they inadvertently shed tears. Prabhupada talks about this in the purport, that because it's not like really appropriate for them to just like run up and hug him in front of everybody, they are like sending their own children as representatives first. Prabhupada says, one indirectly embraces the husband by sending the son to embrace him because the son is developed as part of the mother's body. So there's like this separation even in the union because they can't be with him like husband and wife in front of everybody. So they're like with him, but they're also not with him. It's very poetic. Verse 33, although Lord Sri Krishna was constantly by their sides as well as exclusively alone, his feet appeared to them to be newer and newer. The goddess of fortune, although by nature always restless and moving, could not quit the Lord's feet. So what woman can be detached from those feet, having once taken shelter of them? From the purport, conditioned living beings are always after the favor of the goddess of fortune. Although by nature she is moving from one place to another, in the material world no one is permanently fortunate, however clever one may be. No one is permanently fortunate. There have been so many big empires in different parts of the world. There have been so many powerful kings all over the world, and there have been so many fortunate men, but all of them have been liquidated gradually. This is the law of material nature, but spiritually it is different. According to Brahma Samhita, the Lord is served very respectfully by hundreds and thousands of goddesses of fortune. They're always in a lonely place also with the Lord, but still the association of the Lord is so inspiringly newer and newer that they cannot quit the Lord for a moment, even though they are by their nature very restless and are moving about. The spiritual relation with the Lord is so enlivening and resourceful that no one can leave the company of the Lord once having taken shelter of him. The living beings are by constitution feminine by nature. The male or enjoyer is the Lord, and all manifestations of his different potencies are feminine by nature. In the Bhagavad Gita, the living beings are designated as para prakriti, or the superior potency. The material elements are apara prakriti, or inferior potency. Such potencies are always employed for the satisfaction of the employer or the enjoyer. The supreme enjoyer is the Lord himself. Generally, people engaged in service are always seeking some post under the government or the supreme enjoyer of the state. Since Krishna, the Lord, is the supreme enjoyer of everything in or outside the universe, it is happiness to be employed by him. Once engaged in the supreme governmental service of the Lord, no living being wishes to be relieved from the engagement. The highest perfection of human life is to seek some employment under the Lord's supreme service. That will make one extremely happy. One need not seek the moving goddess of fortune without the relation of the Lord. Verse 35. That supreme personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, out of his causeless mercy, appeared on this planet by his internal potency, and enjoyed himself amongst competent women as if he were engaging in mundane affairs. Although the queen's beautiful smiles and furtive glances were all spotless and exciting, and although they could conquer Cupid himself by making him give up his bow in frustration, and although even the tolerant Shiva could fall victim to them, still, despite all magical feats and attractions, they could not agitate the senses of the Lord. Common materialistic conditioned souls speculate that the Lord is one of them. Out of their ignorance, they think that the Lord is affected by matter, although he is unaffected. Right? Somebody can say, like, Krishna has so many wives. He's just like, oh, just like me. I understand that. I like women. I'm attracted. I want partners. Like, no, Krishna doesn't need any of that. He's attracted to the devotion. And these are the most beautiful women on the planet. These are the most beautiful women of all time, but he's not attracted to anything external about them. He's accepted them as his wives because of their pure devotion. That's the only thing. And although they're so charming and beautiful and qualified in every respect that there's no demigod around, even Lord Shiva, who cannot be moved by their association, Krishna himself is not moved by that. What he is moved by is the bhakti. Therefore, it's not, he's not like a common person. Common person is like, it's all about the externals. One way or another. Money, beauty, wealth. None of that is it. Those are all just Krishna's energies. Verse 38, this is the divinity of the personality of Godhead. He is not affected by the qualities of material nature, even though he's in contact with them. Similarly, the devotees who have taken shelter of the Lord do not become influenced by the material qualities. From the purport. Even his learned devotees are not affected by the influence of the material modes. The great six Goswamis of Vrindavan all came from greatly rich and aristocratic families, but when they adopted the life of mendicants at Vrindavan, superficially, they appeared to be in wretched conditions of life, but factually, they were the richest of all in spiritual values. Such Mahabhagavatas or first-grade devotees, although moving amongst men, are not contaminated by honor or insult, hunger or satisfaction, sleep or wakefulness, which are all resultant actions of the three modes of material nature. Right? We heard earlier that one of Arjuna's names is Gudakesha, one who conquers sleep. Sleep, I mean, you can't fight sleep. You try to like cut it down. One night you go to sleep for 15 hours because you got to catch up. It's just the modes of nature. But then you look at Prabhupada, who like slept for 2.5 hours a night, traveling around the world. Goes any time zone, just jumps into that time zone. That's only possible under the spiritual energy. So Prabhupada's talking about like being transcendental to these modes of nature. Similarly, some of them are engaged in worldly dealings yet are unaffected. Unless these neutralities of life are there, one cannot be considered situated in transcendence. The divinity and his associates are on the same transcendental plane, and their glories are always sanctified by the action of Yoga Maya, or the internal potency of the Lord. The devotees of the Lord are always transcendental, even if they are sometimes found to have fallen in their behavior. The Lord emphatically declares in Bhagavad Gita 9:30 that even if an unalloyed devotee is found to be fallen due to a previous material contamination, they are nevertheless to be accepted as fully transcendental because of their being fully engaged 100% in the devotional service of the Lord. The Lord protects them always because of their rendering service unto him. And the fallen conditions are to be considered accidental and temporary. They will vanish in no time. Last verse of the chapter. The simple and delicate women truly thought that Lord Krishna, Sri Krishna, their beloved husband, followed them and was dominated by them. They were unaware of the extent of the glories of their husband, as the atheists are unaware of him as the supreme controller. The purport Prabhupada talks about how, like, in order for the love to flow, like Krishna's parents don't remember all the ways that he's God, because then how can he be his parent, right? And so how can he be like a wife to God if you're remembering like his magnificence and opulence all the time? Instead, they're just in love with him. They just love him so much. This is the action of Yoga Maya that covers his greatness so that there can be this pure and free exchange. He plays exactly like a lover in the presence of the cowherd damsels. He plays exactly like a husband in the presence of the queens of Dvarka. Such devotees of the Lord never think of the Lord as the supreme, but think of him exactly as a common friend, a pet son, or a lover or a husband very much dear to heart and soul. That is the relation between the Lord and his transcendental devotees who act as his associates in the spiritual sky, where there are innumerable Vaikuntha planets. When the Lord descends, he does so along with his entourage to display a complete picture of the transcendental world where pure love and devotion for the Lord prevail without any mundane tinge of lording it over the creation of the Lord. Such devotees of the Lord are all liberated souls, perfect representations of the marginal or internal potency, in complete negation of the influence of the external potency. The wives of Lord Krishna were made to forget the immeasurable glories of the Lord by the internal potency so that there might not be any flaw of exchange. But since the dealings of the Lord with his wives are based on pure transcendental love and devotion, the wives were all on the transcendental plane without material contamination. Jai. End of chapter 11. All right, Krishna. Okay, let's take some reflections on this chapter. What did you hear?
I was gonna say, like, I love, we've talked many times over the years about how like Krishna gives so many different paths to people who want to find him, whether it's within Krishna consciousness or other traditions. And I just was really taken again by, common themes between like Christianity um, and some of the stuff we read here, when we talk about like tax collectors and prostitutes, like, following Jesus in the New Testament, like we're seeing that here. And we see like
Right.
women climbing on top of the roofs to see him, which they did on Palm Sunday, which we're coming up into that season. And I just think it's just really beautiful to kind of see themes be recurrent, whether it's in this text in the Bhagavad Gita or it's in the Bible or it's in the Torah, like all the different
ways that Krishna allows us to find him and see him. And like having so much familiarity with, for me of like the Christian tradition, just like to read that here, it's just kind of cool to kind of say like, wow, Krishna really has got us, and it's not even just in what we're reading. It's like in all the different ways, like put the puzzle pieces together, people, like it's real, and I think it's cool to be able to see that.
Yeah, you're feeling really surrounded by his mercy. That's wonderful. Wonderful realization. Thank you. Yeah, there's some nice synergy and reflectivity in a lot of these pastimes. Jai. Any more reflections things you heard you're taking away? There's a few minutes left. If we don't have more reflections, I could start the 12th chapter. That's also available. Looks like that's what we want. All right. Cool. Let's do that. Let's get us started in this 12th chapter. The birth of Emperor Parikshit. Who is he? Well, we'll hear. It'll remind us. Verse 1, the great sage Shaunaka said, the womb of Uttara, mother of Maharaj Parikshit, was spoiled by the dreadful and invincible Brahmastra weapon released by Ashvatthama. But Maharaj Parikshit was saved by the Supreme Lord. Remember that pastime a couple chapters ago? How was the great Emperor Parikshit, who was a highly intelligent and great devotee, born in that womb? How did his death take place, and what did he achieve after his death? We all respectfully want to hear about him, Maharaj Parikshit, to whom Shukadeva Goswami imparted transcendental knowledge. Please speak on this matter. So Ashvatthama, having murdered the sleeping sons of Draupadi, sent this Brahmastra weapon, like a heat-seeking missile, to kill the last of the Pandavas, which was the final piece was that youngest Pandava who was in the womb. Well, that's Parikshit. His mother was the one who called out to Krishna, please, it's coming from my son. Protect me. And Krishna protected Parikshit in the womb. But as the first verse points out, and Prabhupada echoes in the purport, it appears that like it was not possible for him to live in that womb after the weapon was released. So how did he live? And how was he born? What was his life like, this great devotee, Parikshit? Because we know that Shukadeva Goswami, the son of Vyasadeva, who's been referenced earlier as a great liberated soul, he spoke the instructions of Bhagavatam to him. So what's the deal with that? You want to hear about that?
Can I ask you a quick question, Shami Press? So sometimes within the Bhagavatam, I'm puzzled by how we jump from chapter to chapter. Mm-hmm. And so we just finished Krishna going into Dwarka, but now we're going into Parikshit's birth. What's the bridge or what's
for example, in that particular example, if you look at the beginning of the previous chapter, Suta Goswami is talking about how Krishna did this. You see, there's a conversation happening right now between Suta Goswami and the sages at Naimisharanya. That was what was described and introduced earliest in the Bhagavatam, the very first chapter. They're doing this sacrifice at Naimisharanya for the sake of the betterment of everybody. They want to know what's the greatest good for everybody. And at that sacrifice, Suta Goswami is there, and they elected Suta Goswami. They said, you have received the mercy of your spiritual masters, and you were there when Shukadeva Goswami taught Parikshit, so you're like the best of us. You please tell us, what is the best thing that we can do for everybody? So Shaunaka, representing all the sages, is asking questions of Suta Goswami. What's the deal? What happened after Yudhishthira talked to Bhishma Dev? What did Krishna do then? And Suta Goswami is saying, well, he left. He left Bhishma, he left the Pandavas. Bhishma passed away, he left the Pandavas. They were overwhelmed by separation, but then he went to Dvarka, he was greeted by the prostitutes, all this stuff we just read. Then Shaunaka is interrupting or saying, okay, now I want to know about Parikshit. What about him? And so now we're hearing from Suta Goswami again, okay, so here's the deal about Parikshit. So there's a change of venue in the story, but it's through the lips of Suta Goswami right now. And in a little bit, we're going to hear Suta actually start to talk about what Shukadeva talked about. So we're going to have a story within a story. Suta's going to talk about what Shukadeva talked about. Why? Because Suta was there. When Shukadeva talked to Parikshit, he was there. Can I have the Bhagavatam? You can see, I think the illustration is still there. Yeah. Check it out. The inside cover, we have this very cool scene. See what's happening here is you got somebody on a Vyasasana offering, thus and somebody beneath him receiving and hearing. Who are these people? And so many people in the audience, including Narada Muni. This is Narada right there with his Veena. Vyasadeva is there, great sages. That's Shukadeva Goswami teaching and Parikshit hearing. Narada is there in the audience. Vyasa is there in the audience. Sutta Goswami was there in the audience. So many demigods. How that happened is going to be described in the next few chapters. How Parikshit came to the point of taking shelter of Shukadeva Goswami. What their conversation was about. We'll hear from Sutta, who is an audience member. It's a very important conversation. It comprises the bulk of what the Bhagavatam is. So there's several points at which we hear somebody talk about that conversation. Sometimes it's through Sutta Goswami. Sutta quotes Shukadev, who says this. And
I
sometimes
feel
it's
like this is sorry to interrupt. I feel like this might be like sage level 6, like what Raghunath and Kasuba are always talking about, right, Eileen? Is it?
Christopher speaks about it as different levels.
Yeah, I just was trying
Yeah,
to figure out
it's starting to make sense now.
linear. I'm just trying to figure out like, is this taking like I get like how it's a conversation, but I just was trying to figure out like the orientation of each of these different topics one after the other. And if there's not, and it's just like individual stories from a conversation, or is there some sort of like timeline playing out here, or is it jumping? You know what I mean? It's like I know we've jumped around a little bit, but I'm just trying to get from
basically the timeline so far is the first chapter. The sages are introduced. Sutta Goswami starts talking about spiritual life generally. He talks about the incarnations, chapter 3, and then they want to know like how did the Bhagavatam manifest. So he starts talking about Narada Muni and Vyasadeva, and how Vyasadeva gets instructed by Narada Muni, and that's how he's inspired to speak Bhagavatam and meditate on Bhagavatam at his ashram and share it. And then they asked about the activities of Krishna and the Pandavas, right? So then we go into this whole thing of like Krishna with Kunti and Kunti's prayers, and then Yudhishthira is feeling all sad, and so it's kind of chronological based on that. Like, okay, what happened after the Battle of Kurukshetra? You know, like Krishna, the good guys won, but what actually happened? What are the details? So Kunti's prayers, Bhishma Dev's there, he passes away, he offers prayers. Yudhishthira is feeling heartened again. Krishna leaves, goes to Dvarka, he's greeted. His wives love him in this way, etc., etc. Okay, now what about Parikshit? Because he's like the next generation. He was just a baby, but how did he even survive that weapon being attacked in his mother's womb? Like, we know he lived because we know he talked to Shukadeva, but what connect the dots for us? So now Sutta is going to talk about like what happened with that person's life. We last met him when he was in the womb, briefly, when his mother prayed for his protection and Krishna helped. So that's the progression chronologically. Because Parikshit is like, that's that conversation that I showed you, the picture of, Parikshit and Shukadeva is like the linchpin of most of the Bhagavatam. And in that conversation, there's going to be more jumping around, back in time to Ramachandra, or talking about this incarnation or that incarnation, but it's based on a conversation. And that's the main conversation. And so we're leading up to that. Cool? And on that note, I think where are we? Got the 12. What verse? Yeah, verse 4. We got verse 4. Shaunika is asking about Parikshit Maharaj, and we're going to hear more. So for this week, please reflect back anything from chapter 10 or chapter 11. A little more reading this week because we're just kind of getting towards the end of the first canto, and it's a little bit like, yeah, we're faster paced. We did like one chapter a class before. We're going to do more because there's a couple of sections here that are a little bit like lighter, more traveling and this and that. So read chapters 10, 11. Any reflections, anything that stood out to you, please add in the WhatsApp chat. We'd love to have those. They're so powerful and valuable for us. And we'll pick up on 12. We'll hear about how Parikshit was saved in the womb and what his life was like, his birth. Because actually, before he was born, even the astrologers knew he was going to be a great soul. There was astrological symptoms, and a lot of the rest of the canto is going to be about him. So, Hare Krishna. Jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Now let's offer our respectful obeisances unto all the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord. They're just like desire trees and full of desires of everyone and are full of compassion for all the fallen conditioned souls. Jai. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha. Kripa Sindhu Vacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namah. Hare Krishna. Okay, thanks everyone. Thanks for a really good turnout. Have a great night. Have a great week. See you on WhatsApp. There you go.